A long time ago, I'm talking like over 2 years ago now, I was filming a series of videos called Show-verview, where I gave you an overview of the shows that I've been in, right from like my very first audition all the way through to the very, very end. I stopped making those videos and quite a few videos for a while because I went through a huge breakup, then I was having a terrible time at work, then the show that I was in closed, then I just got like really super busy, then I got engaged and married and pregnant, and now I have a baby. Just life happened. Life well and truly happened. But now we are here. I am married, I have a baby, she turned 6 months yesterday. Where is the time going? She's asleep upstairs. So we're gonna crack on with these videos. So sorry this is so late. So today we are talking about the Addams Family, which is a show I love so much. I had so much fun being in this show, and my journey with the Addams Family goes all the way back to 2014 when Andrew Lipper first came to London and was doing his first ever London concert. It was called Lipper London at what is now the Other Palace, but back then it was called the St James Theatre. And Andrew Lipper came to my agent at Curtis Brown and said, do you have any clients that would be up for singing in my show? Do you have anyone like suitable? And my agents very kindly put my name forward. They sent him videos of me singing at that year's West End Live when I was playing Eponine and Les Mis, and he was like, yep, great, she can sing Pulled from the Addams Family. Now I had no idea at this point that there was even an Addams Family musical, but I listened to the song Pulled, fell madly in love with it. It mentions Walt Disney World. It's like a patter song. It's a fun, characterful, it's just a great musical theatre song. It's belty. It was just perfect in my eyes. So I was thrilled that I would get to sing this song, and I literally was entrusted with one song and one song only, and Pulled was it. But I would be singing it with Andrew Lipper on the piano, and I would get to meet and chat to the Andrew Lipper. So through being given this song, I was introduced to the Addams Family as a musical. I bought the soundtrack, I had like the actual physical CD. I was already in love with Nathan Lane and Bebe Neuwirth, but this musical introduced me to Krista Rodriguez and Wesley Taylor, who I now think are amazing. I honestly think I could spot Krista Rodriguez, like her voice. If 1,000 people were singing, I think I'd be able to like pinpoint her out. Her voice is so distinctive and I just love it so much. So anyway, did this concert. We did a matinee and an evening, I think, and I had my friend Tam Mutu in the concert as well. He was singing something from, I think he sang a few things, but he definitely sang something from The Little Mermaid. Anyway, Andrew Lipper comes up to me after the show and he was very complimentary. He was being very, very nice about my voice, and he made this very flippant comment, what I thought was a flippant comment, where he said, if the Addams Family ever comes to the UK, you're my Wednesday. And I thought he was just like massaging my ego. I'm like 20 years old, 21 years old, I'm an absolute nobody in this industry. I really genuinely thought that he was just saying it to like boost my confidence and make me feel good about myself, which I thought was very, very kind, but I really didn't think anything of it. Cut to 3 years later, I'm on the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang tour in 2016. I'm in Wimbledon, and the producer of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang knocks on my dressing room door. He's called John Stalker, and he was like, hey, we have the rights to do the Addams Family, and we're putting it on next year. We're taking it on tour, but Andrew Lipper is adamant that we audition you before we audition anybody else for the role of Wednesday Addams, because you sang like a concert or something for him a few years ago. And I just honestly could not believe that he'd remembered me, that he remembered my voice and like me singing that song. But I also couldn't believe that he'd remembered saying what he said and was actually going to sort of honour what he said and give me a shot at auditioning before opening it up to everybody else. That like blew my mind. So I had to travel, the next venue was Canterbury, so I had to travel from Canterbury back to London to go and audition in front of the director, Matthew White, the casting director, James Orange, the producers, John Stalker and Anne McCluskey were both there. I can't remember if there was definitely an MD in the room, but I can't remember who else was there, or if that was it. But more importantly, a camera was in the room and I was being filmed to then send that footage to Andrew Lipper, and I had to sing Pulled, I want to say One Normal Night, and do some scenes as well. And then after my audition, I had to go and quickly get back on a train to Canterbury to go and do the show of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang that evening. And it was about 2 days later. It's one of the fastest turnarounds I've had. Not the fastest, but one of the fastest turnarounds I've ever had, where it was 2 days later, where I was still in Canterbury and I got a phone call to say that I had the part. But one of my favourite things is that on the Chitty tour, I met my best friend, Scott Page, and he started auditioning for the Addams Family after I'd left the Chitty tour. I think he was still in the Chitty tour because I only joined for like the middle 5 to 6 months and then left, and they continued on without me until like the following February. It was a long 18-month tour that I just did like the middle stint of. So I think he was still performing in Chitty whilst he was auditioning for the Addams Family, and I remember him calling me up. I was in my old flat, sat on my bed, and he called me up and he was like, "You ready to go on tour again next year?" It was the best phone. It was arguably, that phone call was better than the phone call that I had telling me I had the part of Wednesday. But from getting the role, it must have been, I can't remember exactly what month, but it was like the middle of 2016, and I didn't start rehearsals for the Addams Family until like the following March. So it was one of those annoying processes where you get excited about playing the part, but then you're like, oh, I've got to wait all of this time before I get to even be in a rehearsal room. But I guess that's kind of like the excitement and the buzz of it. The first week of rehearsals was just the Addams Family, like just the family cast. The Addams Family is a really weird cast dynamic, I think, because our version, I don't know about the Broadway version, but our version was split completely in half. We had 20 cast members, 10 of which were the principal cast. You've got Mal and Alice, Grandma Addams, Festa, Gomez, Morticia, Wednesday, Pugsley, Lucas, and who am I missing? Lurch. So that's 10 principals within like the actual Addams Family and the Beinecke family, and then you've got 10 ancestors, 5 guys, 5 gals. So for the first of, I think, 5 weeks of rehearsals, we had 5 weeks of rehearsals in London and then like a tech week in Edinburgh where we started. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember anymore, it's been so long, but I'm pretty sure it was 5 weeks of rehearsals. The first week was just the Addams Family and just those 10 principals, just to get a head start on like all of the scenes, of the, like, you know, getting the family dynamics right, making sure that we had all of those conversations about who everyone is to who. And, you know, we are years later after the Addams Family that we know from like the movies. This is very much based on Charles Addams' original cartoons, so we got to look at a load of those. I had to have lots of conversations about who Wednesday is now that she's 18, she's older. What does it mean for her to have this boyfriend who's like normal, from a normal family? Why doesn't she tell her mother? Just like all of these conversations, that's what that first week was all about. Of course, there was lots of singing and lots of dancing. There was definitely a head start on the choreography with Alistair David, just to give us a fighting chance, because our ensemble were all like actual technical amazing dancers. And I mean, I'm only going to speak for myself here, but you know, I am not, so I definitely appreciated the head start. But Sam Womack and Cameron Blakely had to do this huge tango at the end, and I think they also very much appreciated the head start to like learn that and get on top of that and just sort of have even just a vague rough idea and a shape of what they were going to be learning before they filled the room with other people. Then we were joined by the ensemble, and this is when it kind of felt like the proper first day of rehearsals, because if, you know, everyone was doing like the meet and greet again, we got to see the model box, we got to meet Diego, who was the costume designer, and he showed us all of his fabulous artwork for all of the costume fittings began as well upstairs. We were rehearsing in Dance Attic, which is a bit run down and falling apart, but I love it so much. I have such a soft spot for Dance Attic. So we were doing costume fittings upstairs at Dance Attic. I was shown the fabric for my Wednesday dress, which looked like black velvet, but when it hit the light at like the right angle, it was actually this like really electric blue. It was amazing. Originally, in our version, the bows was going to be the wedding between Wednesday and Lucas, and it meant doing like a really big quick change into like a gothic wedding dress, and I was going to have like this short cropped, like my hair, but black, this big like curly black wig with a little like fascinator. I have a photo somewhere. I'm gonna see if I can dig it out and put it on the screen. If I can, it'll appear here. If I can't, really sorry about it. But we ended up scrapping it. I forget the reason why. I think it's because when Andrew Lipper came into rehearsals, and he was in rehearsals a lot, he was amazing and was very, very hands-on, but I think he felt like, because this was the bows, but it was still technically like a scene, he felt like the audience might feel like this was just an extension of the show rather than clapping, because it was like all of the Addams family, all of the characters and all the ancestors and stuff would walk down the aisles and bow, but they were walking down the aisle like it was the aisle of a wedding and like this was still part of a scene. So Andrew was like, it just feels a little bit messy, a little bit like cloudy as to what is going on, and he doesn't want the audience to miss their chance of like applauding and standing if they want to stand, and which is a fair point. But it was a shame to lose it because the idea was really cool, and like the idea of this like gothic wedding, it really reminded me of the music video for My Chemical Romance's Helena. So it was really cool, and I was really sad to lose it, but I also completely understand why it was lost. I remember getting super nervous in rehearsals because Pulled was such an upbeat, fast song that is really hard to sing when you're having to operate machinery, which is an exaggeration, but basically there was like this big winch that Pugsley was on, and I'd have to like turn the handles and stuff in time to the music, and there was a lot of sort of like running around the stage and going to and fro and stuff with like the bird and the butterfly, and whilst also wearing a corset. So I started to get really nervous in rehearsals that I was just going to get out of breath and then by the end of the song sound like arse. So I ran that song every single day whenever they would let me, even just like on my own in the room with Matthew White and like Andrew Hilton on the piano, like our MD, our amazing MD Andrew Hilton. I would just ask if we could just go through it so I could just do my movements and stuff just to get used to doing it. And by the time opening night came around, I was absolutely fine. The only time during the runs that I would struggle was when I'd had a big lunch. But then we all moved to Edinburgh, to the Festival Theatre, which was a super, super exciting first venue. I'd never performed there before. And we were there for 2.5 weeks, pretty much. It was sort of like we had 3 days of tech, and then we opened and we ran for 2 weeks there. And it's just such a super cool venue to open in and to be in Edinburgh and just enjoy such a wonderful city whilst doing a show for the first time. Like, it was just really, really exciting. And then we had a week off, which was the weirdest thing to everyone, because starting a show and opening a show and having that huge high and then being like, right, bye everyone, see you in a week. But it kind of worked out perfectly because for anyone who has watched my channel for a long time, this was the week where I went to surprise my family in Disney World, and none of them had any idea that my third week of a show would be a week off. My mum knew because my mum's like on top of everything and likes to know where I am and what I'm doing. And I also used her to try and surprise the rest of my family. So she was like my man on the inside. So the timings worked perfectly. My family flew out on my last day in Edinburgh. I think that's right. Or maybe the day after my last day in Edinburgh, and then I flew out the next day to surprise them all. And I got to spend a whole week with my family in Florida. It was perfect. I think all in all, from like rehearsals to our final night, it was 9 months long, from like March to December. And halfway through the tour, our producer came to us and was like, hey, we're taking the show to Singapore for the final venue. So random. None of us have any idea why that happened or why that was a thing, but hey, we got to go to Singapore for 5 weeks and it was great. This was one of those jobs that I loved so much that I hated being off sick. So I only had 4 shows off sick, which was two days. It was one Saturday in Sheffield. Something bad happens to me every time I'm in Sheffield. Every time. In Chitty, I fell backwards over a small child and injured my back. And in Addams Family, it was the first and only venue of the UK tour where my voice just went, bye-bye, we're not doing this today. And I went off for the last 2 shows of Sheffield on a Saturday. And I remember Dickon, our amazing guy who played Lurch, he's still a good friend of mine now. He's amazing. He's one of the most adorable people that I know. And I went in on the day that I went off, and I went to warm up and was just struggling so much, and I couldn't belt. I sounded like nuts and bolts being thrown into a blender and put on high speed. Like, it was just this like TV radio static. every time I tried to belt. And Dickon heard me like panicking, ran out to Tesco and bought me like a little homemade remedy of like honey, lemon, green tea. He even bought some chili powder and some brandy in the hopes that that would help. But ultimately I made the call a little bit late, to be honest, but I made the call that I wouldn't be doing the shows that day. And then the other time I went off was in Singapore, because we got there on the Tuesday, like really late in the evening. And then for the next 3 days, they had me and Oliver Ormston, who was playing Lucas at the time, they had us get up like crazy early in the morning. Like I'm talking like 4 a.m. in the morning to be on like Good Morning Singapore and like early morning TV news shows, whilst also doing, we had this media call where we performed Pulled, One Normal Night and Full Disclosure. So we arrived Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, press, Friday was press night. So by the time I got to Saturday, the week had caught up with me, the jet lag had caught up with me, and I was dead on my feet. So that was my only other day off in Addams Family, and I'm quite proud that out of however many shows we did over the course of 9 months, 8 months performing, 1 month rehearsing, I only had 4 shows off. Not quite as good as my 0 shows off as Truly Scrumptious, but then not quite as bad as my 9 shows off out of 160 as Veronica Sawyer. So all in all, I did pretty well, I think. One thing I hated about the Addams Family was the yellow dress. There was one point where I had to wear this yellow dress, and it kind of was fitting that I hated it because Wednesday hated it too, but I just looked like an absolute tit in this dress. I think if I had like worn that dress out in normal everyday life, it would have been fine, but with like the black plaits and the pale face, and it was a sleeveless dress, then I had to like pale up my arms as well, and I just hated it. I hated it so much. But then again, like I said, fitting because Wednesday hated it too. So getting to work with Cameron Blakely on that show was maybe one of the funniest experiences of my life. I had worked with him before on Les Mis, my second time playing his daughter, and he's just one of the most naturally funny men I've ever had the privilege and fear of working with, because being on stage with Cameron, you never know what's going to happen because every show is completely and utterly different. But there were times when he made himself laugh, and that was my greatest joy ever, because he always made himself laugh trying to make me laugh in the song Happy Sad. Happy Sad is a song that Gomez sings to his daughter Wednesday about how he's happy and he's sad watching her grow up and become a woman, and you know, she needs him a little bit less every day, and it's a really beautiful ballad, like a slow, lovely song from a father to a daughter. It meant that whenever he made himself laugh, it was even more uncontrollable, because it was definitely not a song that you could get away with laughing through. And there were 2 instances that I will always remember that will not sound funny when I say them to you, but to me, I honestly thought I was going to pass out because I couldn't breathe through my laughter. Now, during this song, I've got nothing to do. I literally just have to sit there and watch him sing this song at me. So it was even funnier to me that he would get himself into these situations and then I couldn't dig him out of this situation. He'd done it to himself, and now he had to suffer the consequences through a song that was completely a solo song. So the first time I was holding my crossbow, as I often was during that show, it was in my lap, and he reaches over and sort of touches my hand, and as he brought his hand away, the elastic strings on the crossbow, because obviously it wasn't a real crossbow, they were just like bungee cord, and his finger caught the bungee cord and it made this really loud boing, 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 boing noise, and it made him laugh, which then made me laugh, and then me laughing made him laugh even more. And it was also just the memory of his eyes going really wide as this crossbow bungee cord thing made this really loud noise and this perfect silence. And the other time was around the same moment in the song where he sings, "Love will conquer all," and then he says, "It even conquered you, my little Attila." And instead of saying conquered, he said canonkered. "It even canonkered you, my little Attila." And something as small and as stupid as that finished us off. I had tears making tracks in my white makeup down my face by the end of the song, and Cameron barely got the lyrics out I don't know how he did it. But one of the things that happened was Singapore. We were meant to go to Singapore for 5 weeks, have a week off, and then go to Jakarta for 2 weeks to do the show there. And then that got cancelled. But the cast were figuring out how we could go to Bali in that week off. So when Jakarta got cancelled, we were like, hey, we can still just go to Bali and then fly home, like fly to Singapore and then get our cast flights home a week later, like get the company just to move our cast flights a week later. So we go Singapore to Bali, Bali to Singapore, Singapore to home. Of course, this was exactly the time that that volcano erupted in Bali and they were evacuating where we were going. So then we were kind of stranded because we'd already moved all of our flights, and to move them back, it was going to cost us all £1,000 each. So we were like, our only options are really to risk it and go to Bali, which I don't really want to risk because I don't really want to drown in lava, or we just stay in Singapore for a week. So that's what we ended up doing. A bunch of us just stayed in Singapore, but then the day that our flight was due home from Singapore, it got cancelled to a day later, and I was meant to be going into rehearsals for the Christmasaurus the day after. Like the day I landed, I was meant to get off the plane and just go straight to rehearsals to start the new week. I was already fighting my arse off to learn all my lines. I had them send me videos of the choreography. I was learning it in my hotel room in Singapore. So luckily, by the time I got to rehearsals, I walked in and knew everything, thank God, because I think everyone else was getting a little bit shaky that I hadn't turned up to rehearsals yet. Obviously I was keeping them informed, but it was getting a bit like, oh, squeaky bum time, Kara's not here. I hope that she knows everything by the time she walked in. So I really made sure that I did. And right on cue, as I finish my story, my daughter's awake, so I'm gonna go. Thank you for joining me. See you very soon. Bye.